But first, socializing, buffet tables, and cheers in Milwaukee this weekend. And we're not talking about a Brewers tailgate party. It's the annual Republican Party of Wisconsin convention, underway as we speak. The party convention takes on extra luster in an election year like this one. That's when candidates reap endorsements from fellow members and the party itself. Last month's Wisconsin Public Radio St. Norbert poll asked statewide voters who they would vote for in the Republican primary for governor. Former Congressman and Neshota businessman Mark Neumann, Milwaukee County Executive Scott Walker, or another Republican candidate. About half the respondents were still undecided. Those willing to commit to Walker or Neumann were split. 23% said they'd vote for Neumann. 24% said they'd vote for Walker. Even what appears to be a close race last week, Neumann announced he would not seek his party's endorsement at this weekend's convention. That hasn't prevented him from attending the gathering in Milwaukee, where he joins us now. And Mr. Neumann, thanks very much for doing so.
It's great to be with you.
Well, why aren't you seeking this endorsement?
Well, we feel that, as we have done for the last 30 years in the Republican Party, that the primary voters on September 14th should select the nominee. And in fact, that's how it will be done. So we just feel it's the responsibility of the voters and not the party leaders who are meeting in Milwaukee this weekend. And we prefer to see the voters on September 14th make the decision.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of people believe that the party chosen is Scott Walker, and that perhaps it's easier for you to say you don't want it than to go through the process and not get it.
Sure, and let's be upfront about that. I mean, that's absolutely the case. No denying that. Scott's been recruiting these folks and working with them for the last 6 years. During those 6 years, I've been in the business world, trying to meet a paycheck every week. It's a tough world out there right now. We're in home building. And, there's no question that over the last 6 years, he's been working to recruit these folks to vote for him at this convention. We respect that. I respect the people. And I also understand that if we're going to turn our state around, we need a small business person, and a small business person could not have possibly spent that amount of time over the last 6 years recruiting these folks to vote for them at this particular convention. People are going to decide in September. I'm very relaxed about it, and I have great confidence in the people in the state of Wisconsin.
But what does it feel like to not have the backing of the party under whose banner you are running for governor?
Well, the bottom line on this is when we go out to main streets all across Wisconsin, which we've been doing a lot, and visit the business owners, the small business owners and their employees and the people that come into those stores, our support is great out there. And you're going to see at the convention, you're going to see a big banner showing some of our endorsed people. We got lots of endorsements, but they're from normal people. They're from people that we meet on our main street visits all across the state. So we're comfortable, we're confident, we're humble in accepting the support of these folks, and we very much appreciate them. It's not the Republican Party leaders that are going to meet in Milwaukee here this weekend that are going to determine our nominee. It's the voters on September 14th, and that's the way it should be.
Now this race between yourself and Scott Walker has already gotten kind of tough. Some observers say that perhaps Tom Barrett is sitting back in delight watching the Republican candidates kind of devour their own. Is this primary battle going to give the Democrat contender a leading position?
Well, I think that depends on how my opponent treats it as we move forward. We have challenged him, asked him nicely, ask him any way we can think of to join us at town hall meetings across the state of Wisconsin, or debates if he'd rather do debates. But I think if the Republicans, Scott and myself and anybody else that would be in the race, would get together, travel around the state, do town hall meetings so people can meet us all over the state of Wisconsin, I think the primary in that case would be very, very good. Now, if on the other hand there are no town hall meetings with joint appearances, there are very few debates, and all that happens is it becomes a slugfest in the primary, that would be very, very bad. From our end, we intend to stay very focused on a positive vision for the future of the state of Wisconsin. Our top priority is bringing jobs and economic development to our state, and we will be spending a lot of time talking about exactly how to go about doing that.
Let me ask you, how different is your platform from Scott Walker's? What I hear is we want to reduce taxes, reduce spending, and thereby grow jobs.
When folks decide who they want to be their next governor, it's the resumes that they should be looking at. So even though you hear some of those things that sound the same, we need to cut taxes. I've already done that once when I was in Congress 12 years ago. We passed the biggest tax cut in American history. At the same time, we got the federal budget balanced for the only time in a generation that it's been done. When you really look at the resumes coming into this thing, the folks have got to decide if they want someone who has made their career in politics. Both Tom Barrett and Scott Walker have spent virtually the last 16 years representing the Milwaukee area in politics, or if they want a small business person. And that's not a slam either way. It's not negative or anything else like that. It's just very, very different resumes. With the economy where it is today, I'm very confident that the people of our state are going to select a small business owner from the Shota over the people that have spent their lives in politics representing the Milwaukee area. And again, nothing negative about that. It's the facts and the resumes.
Let me ask you this. Experts that I speak with continually ask, why would anyone want to be governor in this economic climate? The budget picture looks bleak coming into the term of the next governor. We've got this so-called funding cliff, losing the federal stimulus money that helped boost us over the past year. What should voters expect by way of spending cuts that you talk of and tax cuts towards services in the state of Wisconsin?
Well, let me start with why anybody would want this job going forward. For me, it's strictly a concern for the future of our state. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. I've watched the hundreds of thousands of jobs leave the state of Wisconsin, and I'm very, very concerned that when my children and grandchildren reach a point where it's time for them to find a job, I want them to have a job opportunity here in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a beautiful state. It's a great place to raise a family. Sue and I, my wife and I, have had a wonderful privilege of living the American dream here in this state. And the only reason I want the job is because I would hope to be a part of the solution. I don't have a white horse, but I would hope to assemble a team of people that can bring about solutions to the problems you're mentioning. In terms of budgeting, it is very, very clear to me that we have to do the same things we did when I went to Washington 16 years ago. When I went there, we had huge budget deficits, a growing debt, and a tremendous loss of jobs in the United States of America. Many of your listeners will remember those eerie Ross Perot numbers coming across the screen telling us America was doomed and dead and gone. And we understood that we had to balance the budget by controlling government spending and then pass tax cuts so that people could keep more of their own money. And we understood that when they kept more of their own money, they would only do one of 2 things. They would either spend it, and that would create jobs as people provided the goods and services they bought, or they would save it, and that would then become the capital that our businesses need to grow and expand. And when we look back on those years, it worked. When I left Congress, the budget was balanced. We had cut taxes, and our economy was booming.
Let me ask you this.
That's what we need to do here in Wisconsin.
Do you anticipate then for the state budget freezing spending or cutting spending?
I would envision that we initially start with a real reduction in spending at a 1% rate. I would like to see it systematical and incremental as opposed to anything real radical that would upset the state as a whole. But I do expect to see at least, and again, I like to underpromise and overperform, but at least a reduction in the size and scope of government of 1% in real dollar terms for every year that I'm in office.
Very quickly, the biggest thing that we spend our money on in the state is school aid. Would you cut school aid?
The whole education discussion is something we probably need more time for. My entire background is education. I have an undergraduate degree in math education, a master's in supervision, postgraduate work at Madison, taught in the public schools in the UW system. So suffice to say, I have a very wide background in the field of education. We also run 3 choice schools in Milwaukee and 1 in Phoenix with 1,000 kids in our system at about 50 cents on the dollar compared to the public schools.
Yes or no, would you cut school aid?
Well, I'm getting to that. What we really need to do is reduce the mandates from Madison on our schools and empower our local school boards and principals to run their school systems in a more cost-effective manner. I have a specific statement from a superintendent of schools that says he can reduce his spending in his district by 25% if Madison gets out of his way. So the answer to your question is we can provide a higher quality education to our kids. At the same time, we reduce spending in education.
We are going to have to take that issue up at another time. I'm sorry to have to cut you off that way. Mark Neumann, thanks very much for joining us.
It was great to be here.